Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
And welcome back to FPL Graduates, and welcome back to another video on the channel where we are going to be talking about building an FPL draft, but with a little bit of a twist.
Yeah, it's going to be a Threemium draft with Kane, Salah and Haaland. A lot of people are worried that they can't fit the Spurs assets into their FPL team. So we've done a little FPL draft that might get your mind thinking about tinkering your team just a little bit.
Okay, so in goal, we're starting with a guy we have been banging on about for a while. It is Edouard Mendy. To be fair, not too much needs to be said about him. At 5 million, he's got to be in there. We know that with free premiums, we're going to have to cut the budget, cut costs a little bit here, there, and elsewhere. And Mendy is one of the guys where we can do it for because, to be honest, at 5 million, he's an absolute bargain.
Yeah, obviously you could go with the likes of Edison and Allison, but that, like Ben alluded to, that's 5.5 million more. I think Mendy will probably be close to matching them points-wise this season. Chelsea's defence looks only to improve, really, with the signings they're making. Yes, they've lost Christensen, maybe Azpilicueta, maybe Alonso, but they're bringing in the likes of Koulibaly. Koundé might be on his way. Some really elite-level defenders, which can only make that defence better, in my opinion. So he is the best keeper on the game, in my opinion, as well. So he's in goal. So moving on into the defence, and we do have one premium defender in Trent Alexander-Arnold in there. He's in basically everyone's teams, over 55% owned as we are recording this video. Fulham away, first game of the season. He's pretty much as close to essential as you're going to get this season. What's your thoughts, Ben?
Yeah, this is sort of like what you're looking at in terms of a back four. You're going to, again, like we said before, cut costs a little bit. And Tomiyasu is a cheap Arsenal defender for an elite team. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for cheap players in elite teams this season. That is the way to go forwards with free premium drafts. So Tomiyasu fits that mold perfectly, as does Kyle Walker. If he gets the minutes, like Josh said, he could be fantastic asset. And, Botman as well. Good value picks all round. And then, Trent Alexander-Arnold just has to be in every team. He's an essential player.
Yeah, one thing to mention with these 4.5 million defenders, then the third one that is on the bench, they all rotate really well. So you can play at least two of them with green fixtures every game week, I think for the first 10 game weeks. So between Arsenal, Newcastle and Brighton, spoiler alert, you can have really, really good rotation there. So that's something to bear in mind because you're probably going to wildcard before game week 10 anyway, because we get that early a free wildcard, in fact, in game week 16 when the World Cup starts. So that's something to bear in mind. So these 4.5s are really good options at the back. Obviously, Botman, 4.5. I'd expect him to start pretty much all the games. It's going to be interesting to see who plays centre-back for Newcastle, as they've got Botman, Dan Burn and Fabian Schär. Both of those guys probably don't deserve to be dropped, but then I don't see them not playing Botman after spending so much money on him. And like Ben said, with Walker, it's a minutes thing. Again, if Cucurella is getting minutes, he's going to be the same price if he does join City. So that's something to bear in mind with that as well.
Okay, so let's move on into the midfield now. And again, we're following somewhat of a similar theme with Marcus Rashford. He is a cheap player in potentially an elite team. We know Man United have had a good preseason start. They haven't stopped going on about it. Josh hasn't stopped going on about it. But if he can hit form, he'll be a really good value pick. And it's worth noting, I saw this on Twitter earlier, that Manchester United players tend to have the harshest price rises and falls at the start of the season because of how massively supported they are across the world. If United are doing well, all the United fans will buy their players. If they're not doing well, you know what they're like. They'll throw their toys out of the pram and sell them all instantly. So we will see quite a volatile market for Manchester United players. So it's worth potentially having Rashford in there. As I say, that's relatively low risk in terms of an investment. Pedro Neto, he's having a fantastic preseason, or starts of the preseason, a goal and an assist in his first game. Bukayo Saka, you could really go in there for any £8 million midfielder, and it's quite a nice blessing to know that sort of free premiums, and you can still fit in a Luis Diaz, a Saka, a Mason Mount, a Mahrez, someone like that, and then Salah, again, he's the guy that you got to have in first premium on the team sheet. Josh, what are your initial thoughts on these four guys in the midfield, and what's sort of the reasoning behind the players you picked in particular?
Yeah, like you alluded to with the 8 million and even the 6.5 million in Rashford, you could always mix that about. If you fancied a Liverpool triple up, you get Diaz in there and then maybe go for an Odegaard or a Martinelli in the Rashford spot. So that's easily done. Same with Neto. You could choose any 5.5 million midfielder. It's a template basically, so you can choose who you want. For me personally, I think as we won't have Jesus in this draft, Saka is important to have. You're going to need some of that Arsenal courage in attack, and I'm sure Saka will get points at the start of the season. We spoke about that on our previous video. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you check it out in the description. Rashford, like you mentioned, pre-season United look really good going forward. It'll be interesting to see if that translates to the season. It is only pre-season, but yeah, Martial, Sancho, and Rashford all look really good. Obviously, Ronaldo is to come back, so whether that affects that sort of attack, we'll wait and see. But I think he's a good option, and 6.5 million is definitely a risk worth taking. He's like 10% owned already, as Ben alluded to, with the price rises. So that is pretty high owned considering he's a very unknown quantity after a poor season, an injury-riddled season last season. And Pedro Neto, for me, is by far the best £5.5 million midfielder. There's a reason why he's over 20% owned. He's a very, very good player, underpriced due to injuries last season. So if he can stay fit, I'm almost certain he'll score above 100 points, if not more, going into next season.
Okay, so as you probably know by the title of the video, these are the two strikers that we're going for, Harry Kane and Haaland. I think this is more of a debate than people think with these two. Harry Kane, with a full preseason under his belt, which he hasn't had in a long time, we've got to remember that, could come out of the blocks really quickly. And we'll see what happens with Haaland. We haven't seen him in preseason yet, but we anticipate that when he does play, he'll score goals anyway. So it's a really difficult decision between the two for a lot of FPL managers. And I think unconsciously, everyone's gone for sort of Haaland. But Kane could be an underrated player in this team.
Yeah, Kane's underlying stats since Conte took over are the best in the league out of everyone. So, he's definitely no underdog in terms of that Haaland-Kane debate. I think a lot of people will go Haaland just because of the ownership, and that is something you've got to bear in mind. Kane is nowhere near the level of Haaland in ownership. I think he's only around 15%, 20% now. So, it's definitely nowhere near the levels of Haaland, and that's something to bear in mind if you're considering going for either or one of them. Is the ownership. So if Haaland does score and you don't own him at 65%, that's without captaincy as well, it's going to be a bit painful for you.
Okay, so moving on to the bench, and it is a very big bench, as you can see. We zoomed it in a little bit so you can truly see who we've got on the bench for this one. So we've gone Caballero in goal, just a standard 4 million keeper with a nice kit. For the aesthetics, you've got to go for it. As Josh gave it away, kind of, Lewis Dunk is one of those guys that rotates really well with the other defenders that we got on our team. Andreas Pereira, now it's interesting with this guy coming to Fulham. Hopefully he starts, hopefully he gets a starring role in that Fulham midfield going forwards as well. Could be a really attacking asset. And Archer has been a guy that has impressed us so far in pre-season and could be one of the better £4.5 million players to go if he gets in Gerrard's team for the season. Josh, what are the initial thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Lewis Dunk rotates really well, and I think he's underpriced this season. He's been 5 million for a couple of seasons in a row. He's really good aerial threat from set pieces. I would choose him over Lamptey just because I know Lamptey's minutes will be reduced. He always doesn't play the most amount of minutes anyway because they try and protect him. So Dunk for me, he's a 90-minute man. He'll be in that team. And like I said, an aerial threat. Andreas Pereira has already picked up an assist in pre-season for Fulham. He's on set pieces as well, some corners and free kicks, which is really good. For 4.5 million, I think, you can't get anyone better than him right now. And then Cameron Archer's in there. I don't expect him to get any minutes. And that 4.5 forward slot, I don't think any of them will get any minutes in the season. It's literally just there as a bit of dead wood. So choose who you want, but I would try and choose against Greenwood because of the ownership. We've spoken about that in previous videos of how the prices could change. So that's something to bear in mind.
Okay, so that rounds up our video on our draft with 3 premiums in. Let us know what you thought of that draft. And a reminder that the Patreon is now live as well. So feel free to check that out if you would like to.
Yeah, and that wraps it up, really. Make sure you follow us on all of our socials as well. They're all linked in the description too.
And as per usual, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later.